Malware used to be a prank, digital graffiti, annoying but not world-ending. Well, those days are long gone. Today, it's a massive, multi-billion-dollar industry. In this explainer, we're going to track exactly how we got from simple digital vandalism to full-blown cybercrime Inc. Okay, so when you picture a hacker, what do you see? Probably some lone wolf in a dark room, right? Hood up, code flying across the screen. Look, it's a cool image for the movies, but in reality, it's completely, and I mean dangerously, out of date. We're about to pull back the curtain on how that simple mischief evolved into a global criminal enterprise. So here's how we're going to break it all down. First, we'll tackle the myth versus the reality of who these hackers are. Then, we'll get into the rise of Cybercrime Inc. and the so-called black economy. After that, we'll look at how we defend against these new threats. And finally, peek into the future of digital crime. All right, first step, let's completely shatter that old stereotype. Because over the last 20 years or so, the kind of person who creates malware, and more importantly, why they do it, has totally transformed. Back in the day, the image of a virus writer was basically a young troublemaker, a kid with incredible tech skills, but maybe not so great moral judgment. The thinking was they'd just, age out of it, like it was some kind of rebellious teenage phase. Yeah, that's definitely not the world we live in anymore.
So what was the deal with those early malware creators? What actually drove them? It was a totally different game back then with a completely different rulebook.
And this slide right here is the absolute heart of the matter. This is the big shift. We've gone from a culture driven by notoriety and bragging rights to one driven by profit. The fundamental reason why someone creates malware has done a complete 180, from wanting to be famous to wanting to get paid. Just look at this list for a second. What's the one thing you don't see? Money. Profit wasn't even really on the radar. This was all about reputation, curiosity, peer pressure, basically seeing if you could pull it off and get your name out there. And that brings us to the big turning point. This is where the game changed. The hobbyists and the vandals started to disappear, and the professionals, the entrepreneurs of crime, they took over. This is the moment the black economy was born. So what exactly is the black economy? Well, it's exactly what it sounds like. A criminal marketplace. Think of it like an eBay or Amazon, but for illegal goods and services. You can buy malware, rent computing power for attacks, purchase stolen data. It's organized, it's efficient, and it is all about making money. Okay, so if this is a whole economy, there has to be an engine driving it, right? And that engine is the botnet. You can think of botnets as the factories of this digital underworld. So how does a botnet even work? Well, it's pretty simple and pretty scary. Step 1, your computer gets infected with some malware. Suddenly, it's a zombie. Step 2, your zombie PC secretly joins a whole network of other infected machines. And then this entire army of computers just sits there, waiting for orders from one person, the botmaster, who can then use them all at once to launch a massive attack. And this is where the business model really clicks into place. The botmaster, the person controlling this zombie army, doesn't even have to do the dirty work themselves. Instead, they rent out their botnet. It's crime as a service. So other criminals can pay them to send out spam, steal identities, or even launch attacks to shut down websites for extortion. It's literally a menu of criminal services for sale. And just like any real company, this whole operation has specialized departments. It's not a one-person show. You've got the engineers, the bot programmers who create the malware, you have operations managers, the bot herders who control the network, and you even have a finance department with mule drivers and cashiers who figure out how to launder all the stolen money. This is organized crime, plain and simple, just built for the internet. Okay, so we've talked about the business side of things, but what does this mean for regular people, for you and me? Well, when cybercrime becomes a business, the scary part is that you're not just a potential target anymore. You can also become an unwitting part of the machine. To really understand the human cost, let's look at a real story from the source material. It's about a young couple, and they were not tech-savvy at all. They really only used their computer for basic stuff, like sending emails to family. So imagine their surprise when they get a notice from their internet service provider threatening to cut off their service. Why? Because their connection had been flagged for sending out massive amounts of spam. They were, of course, shocked. They swore it had to be a mistake, but the ISP was sure. The data didn't lie. Well, it turns out a tech consultant took a look and found the real problem. Their computer had been infected by a Trojan. It had been secretly turned into a relay station for spammers. See, they weren't the criminals at all. They were actually the first victims. Their computer had been turned into one of those zombie PCs we were just talking about, making them a pawn in someone else's criminal game. So that brings us to the really big question, doesn't it? We know cybercrime is a business now. So, like any business, it has to grow. Where are these criminal entrepreneurs going to look for their next big market? So where is that next frontier? Well, if you want to predict where the criminals will go, you just have to look at where the technology is going. Cybercrime Inc. is always looking to expand, and the source material points to the very devices we're bringing into every part of our daily lives. The playbook is actually pretty simple. Just follow the internet connection. I mean, it started with our PCs, right? Then it moved to our phones, and now they're looking at our cars, our voice-over IP phones, even our home media systems. Basically, every new smart device we buy is another potential door for them to walk through, another potential zombie for the army. And here's the kicker. The source material says it perfectly. Being unplugged or disconnected just isn't an option for most of us anymore. We live online. And because this is a professional industry now, the threats are only going to get smarter and more dangerous. So I'll leave you with this final thought to chew on. As everything from our cars to our refrigerators gets connected to the internet, what do you think is the next big cyber threat we should all be worried about?